I got an email today from Ginni Thomas, Justice Thomas's wife. I cannot adequately express enough appreciation for you guys pulling into reacting to the Biden effort on the Supreme Court. You guys have filled the sails of many judges. And then you've got Kagan from the inside really being somewhat disloyal and somewhat treasonous in what she's doing. This is a spiritual battle because the evil that will occur if we lose the rule of law is beyond, I think, what any of us can even think through.
The audio you just heard was from an exclusive call between donors and the leaders of the self-described largest legal organization dedicated to defending religious liberty for all Americans, First Liberty Institute. In case you're not aware, here's a brief introduction to the beliefs and people this group works for.
A judge must uphold the integrity and independence of the judiciary, and she cannot do so if she considers systemic racism in her decision-making. While racism is alive in the hearts of many people in our country, it does not determine the outcome of any minority's educational, professional, or economic accomplishments. Every lawyer and judge promises to defend and protect the U.S. Constitution, but she cannot uphold this oath if she believes that the Constitution and the principles of America's founding are inherently racist and inherently flawed.
First Liberty lawyer Keisha Russell argued against confirming Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court because Justice Jackson believes in the truth, systemic racism.
It also has to give it to parents that can use send their children to schools that offer a religious education. So not just religious affiliation, but explicitly offer a religious education. The Supreme Court said it would violate religious freedom not to allow parents to use the money to send their children to religiously oriented schools. If a state's going to have this kind of a tuition program, that has to allow the money to go to schools that offer a religious education. So that's state support for a religious education.
The justices ruled in favor of former high school football coach Joseph Kennedy, whom we will be speaking to a little later in this hour, in a 6-3 decision that fell along ideological lines. The court found Kennedy's First Amendment rights were violated when the school he worked for put him on paid leave for praying on the field.
It gave, quote, short shrift to the Constitution's Establishment Clause, and also that it basically ignored the pressures that students may feel when they participate in these school-run activities.
First Liberty also led the push to get both of these cases heard at the Supreme Court level. The ultimate goal of the group, cited years ago by Ted Cruz, in addition to fighting for a settlement for Navy SEALs who refused to get the COVID vaccine.
First Liberty Institute has said that nominating you to the Fifth Circuit is, quote, the wrong pick for 5 reasons. He is not a conservative. He's never been affiliated with the conservative movement. He's never volunteered his time to advance conservative causes. He's never been active in conservative legal circles, and he's never written any decisions that have advanced conservative principles. Is their assessment wrong?
This sends a message to the Department of Defense and to military leaders that we need to get back to the business of being a military, and that we need to stop this ridiculous and unlawful purge of religious service members, people who volunteer, raise their hand, show up every day to put on the uniform and defend and protect the Constitution of the United States and our freedom. So really, it does provide meaningful protection. And out of the dozens of cases that were filed, we're the only ones that got this substantive relief, and it's really a tremendous victory.
Now back to the audio we introduced at the start of this piece. It's no wonder why Ginni Thomas, of all people, would be so thrilled to see this group fight back against any sort of Supreme Court ethics reform.
Thomas is also disclosing another trip that same year to California with Crow, though the report only includes lodging expenses, not travel costs. ProPublica reported Thomas had flown on Crow's private jet, a stark contrast to the more modest image the conservative justice has projected. And Thomas said the trips were a form of personal hospitality that justices did not have to report. Now, his disclosure report said the 2 trips had been inadvertently omitted from his 2019 report.
In a series of 29 text messages to Meadows, Ginni Thomas urges him to take action to prevent a Biden victory, citing conspiracy theories about a stolen election popularized by the far-right QAnon movement.
He thinks that the ban on whites-only lunch counters is unconstitutional. He thinks that the minimum wage is unconstitutional. This is simply a man who does not believe in democracy. And so I'm not at all surprised to learn that he is married to a woman who apparently also does not have a very strong attachment to democracy.
Justice Thomas, who is married to Virginia Thomas, a financially and personally involved operative in the Stop the Steal movement and Capitol attack, also joined opinions in these cases, even as clear evidence mounted that not only was his wife fully committed to overthrowing the results of a fair election, but she was actively lobbying members of the Trump administration attempting to do just that. The questions before the court had unquestionable implications for Thomas's wife and consequently Thomas himself, making his refusal to recuse one of the most shocking examples of conflict of interest in the court's history.
I think Americans want a code of ethics. Justice Barrett wants a code of ethics.
They have a code of ethics.
But it's not enforceable, and they have less restrictions on them than my lawyers inside the VP's office.
And it's really no surprise to see why First Liberty would be so opposed to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's Supreme Court confirmation.
A binding code of ethics is pretty standard for judges. And so I guess the question is the Supreme Court any different? And I guess I have not seen a persuasive reason as to why the court is different than the other courts.
Are you considering supporting an enforcement mechanism?
I am considering supporting it as a general matter. I'm not going to get into commenting on particular policy proposals.
Decades ago, with their policies unable to sway everyday Americans to vote against their own interest and well-being, the Republican Party hatched their plan to compel citizen compliance by way of the courts. Hell with the will of the people, dark money-funded groups would simply push cases to the Supreme Court to get laws changed undemocratically. We are seeing the full fruits of their sinister labor right now. And they will fight tooth and nail to keep the American people down and out. Enter groups against SCOTUS oversight and reform, something so simple. Think about that. It should be a major red flag for all of us.